Welcome to the Scott Townsend Show, brought to you by Dietzo Man Productions.
Hey, this is Scott Townsend. Welcome back to the Scott Townsend Show. And today I have with me a returning guest, Ben Townsend. He's joined me on more than several occasions in the past. We have a mini-series about meetings and how to have a better life, how to live a better life through having better meetings. And so we've talked about several different aspects of meetings. And today we'll be talking about making sure you've got the right people in your meeting. How's it going, Ben?
Good. How you doing, Scott?
I should have introduced you a long time ago.
Yeah, this works.
It's a long intro.
Yeah.
So, Ben's the executive producer of the Scott Townsend Show. He's also my little brother, although he's taller than I am. But anyway, so meetings. Why is it important to have the right people in your meeting?
Well, I mean, presumably, if you're having a meeting, you're trying to accomplish something. And meetings can range pretty widely, but I mean, there's some discussions you have in meetings that have a very specific focus. You have a very specific outcome you're looking for. And there's some meetings, I think, where it's just you're communicating broadly. Like if you're in a leadership position, you have an organization and you need to have, regular meetings just to keep people informed about things that are going on, take questions from all the people on your team or teams. This could be 20 people or 500 people, I suppose. It's still important to have the right people in the meeting. So I think you want to keep it scoped in. If it's just a broad type of communication session, that audience is going to be bigger. If you're trying to make a decision about something, that audience is going to be much smaller.
And then the other thing too is if you have if it's just an ad hoc meeting and something comes up and you pull some of the usual suspects into a meeting, or just people that in general you think will be able to add value, that's one thing. And I would agree that if you've got a specific goal or an outcome that you have the luxury of planning and putting together for a meeting sometime in the future, now you've got time to craft who is going to be in that meeting. And it's going to be more purposeful, but it's probably also going to be more, like you said, it's going to be more important, impactful, things like that.
Yeah. And, I think it also depends on, the type of work you're in. And the work that I do in the technology field, I'm a pretty technical person. But I also am a consultant. And I talk to customers all the time, and they don't know anything about data or data and analytics, or I wouldn't say they don't know anything, but that's not their area of expertise. Doesn't mean that if you're a technology person, you're smarter than they are or whatever. If you take that attitude, it's going to come through in how you communicate. So you really can't fall into that mind trap of thinking you're the smartest guy in the room. This is just your field of expertise. And as a customer or the person that you're consulting, has questions, or they may have an idea about the way they think the technology should work. And I think you got to listen to that to understand kind of where they're coming from and try to formulate what actually is the issue they're trying to resolve. And then you come and bring your expertise to bear, to get the best solution for that issue. But, in those kind of conversations, I think you also need to have folks in the meeting. I think you want to get it down to the decision makers in that meeting, people who can really articulate the issue that they're facing. And then as a consultant in this case, I think it's pretty valuable to have some other subject matter experts in the room, both on the side of the business decision maker you're talking to, so they can answer some specific details from a customer perspective about the nuts and bolts of things. And likewise, you'll want those kind of people in a technical conversation like that as well, who can speak up about certain technical details. That's having the right people in the room. But I think also as important as having the right people in the room is having the right people in the room who understand their role. And, if you're having people, your technical experts in the room who talk too much, or, if they want to kind of take over a role as consultant rather than answering specific questions when called upon, that can go a bunch of different directions. So you have to have a lot of trust in those people, and you have to understand each other's roles.
Right. No, that's a good point. When you're inviting people to your meeting, just in general, what skills are you looking for in a person when you're having them attend your meeting? What's the ideal meeting candidate?
Well, again, if we've done a good job of understanding the problem that we're trying to solve, and we have our agenda, that sets up pretty specifically, what kind of skill sets you're going to need in the room. You're going to need decision makers for sure. You're going to need some decision support people around them, again, to get into details of process. It doesn't have to be, technology type work. It could be,
right.
Talking to an excavation company, and you have a guy in there that actually runs the excavator to ask certain questions about his preference on, what makes a comfortable cockpit for an excavator. I don't know. I mean, something like that. You want to be able to refer to people like that. But the skill sets, it gets into, okay, so if you understand what problem you're trying to solve, that's going to kind of stake out the potential questions you're going to have. Do you have the right decision makers in the room? Do you have the right people in the room who can ask whatever questions may come? And the fewer people you can invite that covers those bases, the better. Otherwise, it can get
right
too difficult, too unwieldy, and people aren't comfortable speaking in a room full of 50 people, when 7 will do.
Right. I think having somebody in general, some of the general skills that I look for is someone who has, thinks different, divergent thinking, is, uncovering and disarming political landmines. You don't want someone who is coming in to plant the landmines. You're wanting someone, I think, who can identify a landmine that might be exposed or is getting ready to drop, and they can disarm that situation.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a room full of advocates, really. And
yeah, I see where you're going with that one, and I think that's such a great point, and things that you're kind of hitting on an area that's been a very specific challenge in some of the meetings that I've had, even recently, about having people on your team who, as a technical, so as a product manager, I describe the what. Here's what we're going to do for the customer. As a technical team, the team that I work with to actually put their hands on the keyboard and bring that thing to life, they describe how. So I work with the customer to describe the what. Here is the outcome we want. And then I give that to my technical team, and the what is already defined. We know what we're doing, but now they got to determine the how. A lot of times, or sometimes, the people who are doing the how, they want to get more involved with the what, because maybe they don't agree with the direction that it's going. Maybe they don't understand, your strategy, in the same way that you understand it as a person who is driving the strategy, or maybe they're just trying to influence the strategy in a different direction. And if that tug of war happens in front of the customer, that is never a good situation. So you have to trust the people that are in the room. You have to be on the same team. When you're in the room talking to customers or having a meeting where you're talking to a decision maker and trying to help them go to reach a successful conclusion, you do not want a debate among your own team. You got to have that family discussion before you go in, and you have to agree never to try to solution in front of the customer, never debate each other in front of the customer or the people that you're meeting with, whether they're a customer or not, because you want to represent yourself well. And you want to appear, even if there's some things you're not quite sure how you're going to work through, you don't want to air out all your anxiety about what the technical solution is going to look like in front of the customer. That just makes the customer lose confidence in your ability. So everybody
and a customer
questions.
And the customer in this case could be someone who's buying your product, but the customer could also be your general manager.
Yes.
Your customer could be internal, external, anybody.
Yes, exactly.
So it doesn't have to be someone who's, when you say customer, a lot of times I think of someone who's buying your product or service, but a lot of times it could be your boss, your general manager, your president, whoever.
Yeah. Yeah. And for people internal to a big company, that's when I say customer, that's what my customer looks like. I'm not selling a coffee mug or a piece of furniture. I'm in there selling data and analytics solutions. And somebody else, maybe like Janet, my wife, she's in there selling financial management solutions, accounting solutions to somebody. It's not a physical product. It is a service. And if you're internal to a company, no matter what you do, you have customers in that process. You have people that you are delivering things to, and they can either be happy with what you deliver or they can be dissatisfied with that. So all of us have customers, and I think it's helpful to look at them as such.
Another quality or skill is just some good old-fashioned problem-solving skills. People in your meeting who can, take two different ideas, combine them together, and be able to see something that no one else sees.
Right.
Just some good old-fashioned problem-solving skills.
Right. Yeah, and I think part of the problem-solving skills, again, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's defining the problem, because I've heard it said that a well-defined problem is half the solution. So, when you're in the meeting and you're going to deliver something to somebody, I'm going to deliver this report to them, tomorrow because they just asked for it. I'm going to deliver to them, this piece of software. I'm going to deliver to them whatever you're delivering. When you're basically you're in there taking requirements from somebody and you want to understand, you want to understand what they're asking for, but you really have to get in their head to figure out what problem they're trying to solve, because they may be trying to get too far into your world as a technical person, or whatever your technical expertise is, whether it's doing podcasts or it's doing accounting or it's doing technology or engineering or whatever it is. Your customers may feel like they know enough about it to describe what they want using your terms, and maybe they can, but most of the time I would say they really don't understand the full range of potential solutions, and you don't want that baked into what they're asking for, right? You want to understand that, but you also want to understand the actual problem they're trying to solve. And if they're asking for, I need a report that does X, Y, Z, and you find out that the problem they're really trying to solve is to satisfy a regulator's request for proof that you followed the process. Right. If you really understand the problem, the solution you may devise as the expert may be look a lot different than what the customer is actually asking for.
What happens when you don't invite someone to a meeting who thinks they should have been invited?
I mean, I think this is where, understanding the roles that everybody's playing is really important. And that with your leadership team, you do have to be very careful that if they're not there, you can't, if it's something consequential, you can't go and make decisions that's going to affect your leadership team without at least telling them, making them aware of the conversation that's going to take place and what you're trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And, if they want to be there, then I think, it's politics, and this is where politics kind of creeps into things. But, maybe as long as they're not going to be too disruptive, I think it's okay to have them in the room, even if they're not a direct participant. But if you can avoid it, it's best.
Mm-hmm.
They need to rely, if they've hired you for a reason, and hopefully they're not going to micromanage you as a person, you're not a beginner in whatever you're doing, right? You're at the level where you could also slide into leadership.
Mm-hmm.
If you're kind of at that level, they need to respect that role, and not micromanage, because nobody likes that. And somebody who is very, very good at their job, if they get micromanaged, they'll go find another job. They'll go somewhere else. By the same token,
right.
If you throw somebody to the wolves, you got somebody brand new in a job, and you give them, a task that is more appropriate for a senior or lead level person. You're giving to an intro person. They will also leave, because what they need actually is hand holding. And their anxiety level will go through the roof, if you overload them with things way above their pay grade. So either end of that scale is, something to pay attention to, especially at a leadership level. But I think the biggest risk in having leadership in the room is that they try to take over the discussion, because they feel like, as a leader, or for whatever reason, maybe they just talk too much. I don't know, but they feel like they have to be the one in there offering the solution because they're the leader.
Right.
If you have that kind of leader, I would say that's where you got to get better at your manage up skills. And manage up and encourage your leader. We're gonna have this meeting. I will give you the takeaways from this. Here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Let you know how it goes, and try to get them to. You got to manage up sometimes, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that's life, and that's the kind of that gray zone area where you might succeed with it and you might not. But that's what you have to try to do, I think. Yeah,
I've seen that happen so many times. We were in a big group meeting, and the head of I'll just say head of business, kept piping up and offering their opinion and acting like what they were saying was the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And the person who was actually running the meeting, one of the managers, eventually just looked over at the other person offering all this opinion and said, "I think I got this."
Yeah.
And everybody, they got it. We got it. Everybody understood that we're all seeing what's going on here,
Right.
So anyway, one time I was in another meeting where I had technological problems at the very beginning, and it was a large meeting. There was a lot of people in there, including my boss. And the more technological the problem was, or the more problem I had with this technology, the more anxious I got. And the more anxious I got, the more problem I was having.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of snowballed on itself, and, your palms start to sweat, the clock's ticking. And instead of, long story short, my boss stood up in front of everybody and just started conducting the meeting, which was my meeting, and just took over.
Mm-hmm.
And I was standing up front, and he comes up front and just takes over. Mm-hmm. And I had more than several people come up to me after that meeting, go, "What the heck was all that about?"
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you think you're fooling people, but people see right through that kind of stuff. And it's just, I don't know what that is. It's ego. It's micromanaging. It's very uncomfortable. I'll tell you that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a tough one, man. And that's just, that is usually, that is somebody that is that's not a seasoned leader, right?
Right.
You don't have those types of issues from seasoned leadership. Seasoned leadership understands that people are the most expensive thing in their business. And if they mismanage that spend, they're damaging themselves and they're damaging the company and they're damaging somebody's career. So you got to get the most out of those people. And to get the most out of those people, you have to understand how people work and how to create, as a leader, create a workforce that is capable of doing the work that your team is supposed to be doing. And if you're thinking as a manager that you got to do it all yourself and constantly come to the rescue, you're getting in your own way and your team's not growing and it does not scale well.
Let's talk about some of the people you do want to have in a meeting. Someone that I think is nice to have in a meeting, if you can afford to do this. This isn't every meeting, of course, but from time to time, especially exploratory meetings or vision casting, whatever. It's nice to invite people who are like from the front lines, or maybe invite someone who's out on the manufacturing line. Someone who, we're always hearing each other speak. It's like an echo chamber. But you want to, how the job is really done. Go ask the people who are actually doing the job. And I think sometimes it's nice to have those people's perspective. They don't need to come in as an authority on anything really. But when you're talking about plans and projects and stuff like that, they've seen so many of these plans and projects come down the pike, and they're the ones that have to execute it. And, if you have a seasoned employee, someone who's been there a while, you invite them to a meeting to kind of just listen to what we're talking about. They can usually come up with some really good ideas or tell you, that's really going to be tough to do, or, they'll definitely have an opinion. And sometimes I think we overlook those people and their insight.
Yeah, I mostly agree with that. I would say if those people are going to be helpful in getting to a solution on something, if you're trying to sell something, that could be useful. If you're having some sort of exploratory meeting, maybe it's not a consultation with somebody and you're trying to convince them. So maybe it's exploratory. The more of that type of meeting it is, I think the more of grassroots input you want to get, because you want to understand the problem from all different angles.
Right.
And certainly, ultimately you got to think about it this way. If I just come at all these people on the manufacturing floor with a solution and I don't involve them, when I roll it out, they may look at it and go, well, this totally sucks. And we didn't know it was coming. We know nothing about it. Why didn't they ask us?
Right.
So it's wise, I think, if you want buy-in from those people, to get them involved early on, get their opinion.
I think it's also good to have someone who's known for strange ideas.
Yeah. You want people who can think outside the box for sure, who can really help you, solution. Because really what that person is doing is they're helping you throw mud at the idea and see what sticks, and you want that. Now you don't want to do all that in front of a customer, right? But it depends on the kind of meeting again, but you want to thoroughly test out what you're proposing as a solution or whatever. You want to show your coworker the report you're getting ready to take to the boss to say, what do you think about this? Should I use a box around this or not? Should I highlight this or, whatever, and kind of pressure test it a little bit before you take it in for prime time, because it's always helpful to get somebody else's opinion.
Right.
In fact, they're saying, only a fool keeps his own counsel. It's kind of along those lines. It's just simple wisdom, I think, to get more people involved in sharing ideas and pressure testing yours.
So, yeah, I mean, getting the right people into your meeting is so beneficial. I think we can both agree on that. What's the bottom line with getting the right people into your meeting?
For me, again, my rule of thumb is I keep my meetings as small as I possibly can without leaving out people I'm really going to need in that conversation. that's what I got to do. And so, the kind of meeting you're going to have is going to change. And that's going to, like I said early on in this conversation, it could be you're a leader talking to 500 people, or you could be on a tiger team. Those are two completely different types of meetings / gatherings. They require completely different approaches and completely different types of people to have in those meetings. So if you have a lot of clarity on what your purpose is, then that will pretty much tell you who you need to have in that meeting, whether you're out there selling cars or copy machines, or you're a medical sales rep, or whatever you do, podcasting. It's gonna. The people obviously will be different. The skill set's completely different, but I think the approach is pretty consistent. And as we're sitting here talking, just I think one more point here is, sometimes you can get people in a meeting, you really need them, but they tend to talk too much. So you need them there to observe the conversation so they can help you later. But I think it's fair game, to talk to those people before the meeting and say, hey, I need you to be in here to listen to this discussion, but this is going to be a really tight, focused discussion. And I basically want you to be on the fly on the wall, but I think you're really important to have here and do that kind of prep work with people in the room who you might think is a challenge, who might be a challenge in that situation because, they talk too much. They're not bad people, but, this is not their strongest skill set. So I think that's fair. And if you do that in a respectful way, I think you can pull it off. The other thing is, if you are having some sort of exploratory meeting where you're talking about ideas, I think it's important to level set a meeting like that and just say, hey, if that's what it is, this is an exploratory meeting. We're going to discuss different ideas for something. So we want to get as many ideas as possible. So that's why we have all these people in the room here that do the work. They're super creative. We really, really need your input. But what we're not going to do here is evaluate those. So we call those the idea assassins. Somebody says, well, I think we should make this thing and we should deliver it in 6 different colors. And somebody goes, well, that will never work because that's why it won't work. Yeah. So it may not work. They may be 100% right, but you kill the creative process if you have idea assassins in the room. So if that's what you're doing, exploratory things like that, then you got to be aware of certain things like that. And there's different types of meetings where you have those gotchas in there. So you just kind of, based on your business, you got to identify what those gotchas are and just set the ground rules and say, this is what we're going to accomplish. And we're going to do ideas. What we're not going to do is evaluate those. And you can make it funny and say, no idea assassins. Everybody go, but they get the point, right?
Yeah, right.
I think that's important also as a facilitator.
Oh yeah. That's so funny. It's funny you bring that up because we used to make fun of guys that would be idea assassins, and when they would shoot down some idea, I would always act like I'm taking a shotgun.
Yeah,
Okay, that one's down. Next, anybody else up?
Yeah. And, when that happens, man, you kill people's creativity. Then the next guy who has the brilliant idea that you're really trying to get to, which is the reason why you're having the meeting. All of a sudden he goes, well, I'm not speaking up my idea because I don't want to get shot down here. I don't want to be made to look like a fool. So I'm zipping it right here. And they go, Fred, what about you? And he goes, no, I'm good. Seriously.
And he's the one with the answer. All right. Well, thanks, Ben, for all the info and your insight on having the right people in your meetings and better living through better meetings. It was a good time.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Scott. Enjoy the discussion. Have a good one.
Hey, you too. So for Ben Townsend, this is Scott Townsend. Thanks for listening to the Scott Townsend Show. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.
The Scott Townsend Show is a Dietzo Man production. For more episodes, visit the Scott Townsend Show YouTube channel, listen on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.
Scott Townsend Show.